Boker Tov. Today's daf is daf Chaf Aleph and Bab Mציעא. As we went for Achen Chol Beis Yisrael and Sun Batzar V'Shivya. We begin the new parak, the second parak of Bab Mציעא, Elu Metzias. We know the halacha is that if you find something in the street, it's a mitzvah d'oraisa to return it to its owner. How do you return it to its owner? Well, if you know who it belongs to, you just go and give it to him. If you don't know who it belongs to, you make an announcement. You put up a sign. You call it Hashavas Avedi. You try to return it. Now, that's only in items that have some identification mark, a simon, so that the person can identify it, the loser can identify that it's his item. If it's something that has no identification mark on it also, it's very clear that there's no identification mark on it. Therefore, the assumption is that if the man loses it, you lost a $20 note in the street in the middle of Manhattan, you don't have any simon on it. So the assumption is that you gave up, that you were miyayish, that you abandoned it. Rashi says it nesyashi, you gave it up, and therefore it's hefker. And therefore the person, finders, keepers, right? Losers, weepers, finders, keepers, you can keep it. So which items are considered to have identification marks and which ones are not? So first we give the ones that are not considered to have identification marks, and therefore you can keep them. The following things that you find, foundings or whatever you call them, those findings that you find in the street you can keep. The other ones you have to call out, meaning you have to make an announcement and try to return it. Which are the ones that you can automatically keep? You find scattered fruits. So scattered fruits have no simon on them, presumably, and therefore you can keep them. How the person would have given up. We'll talk about exactly what the case is. It's not as clear as it seems. It just says scattered fruits. How much? What does that mean? Most mefuzaris, in other words, if it was certainly like, let's say they fell off the truck on the highway and the guy doesn't even know that if he lost fruits on the street, presumably he would have given up no matter how many there were. Most was he finds scattered money. You say scattered money as opposed to a pile of money. If a person had, say, several coins, one on top of another, you can clearly place them there. Sometimes, as we'll see, the place itself can be the simon. The identifying mark is, I put them on this lamppost. I know where I left them. That's not lost, right? He put them on purpose. That's not a lost item. But if the money's scattered, you can assume it's lost, meaning he gave up on it. He knows that he lost it, and he was miyayish, and therefore it's hefker. Let's say you find bundles of whatever, of let's say grain in the Rishus Harabim, and Rashi explains that they're trodden upon by everybody, and even if there was a simon on the bundle, you can assume that it's been obliterated, and therefore the person gave up hope. So if it's krichas b'shus harabim, obviously if it's a bundle in a particular place, you left it in the shul in your cubby, that's not lost. Igule tvela, or let's say you had fig cakes of figs, pressed figs, also have no simon. Kikra shanachtam, let's say buns of bakery buns, they all look alike. The Burmans or the Angels, they make all the buns the same way. So there's no identification mark on it. All these things you can keep. Machros shadagam, fish strings that they put in fish. That's how the fishermen or how the fish market, they sell them that way. Or chaticha shalbasar, or pieces of meat. There's no identification mark on these items. You find these in the streets, you can keep them. Gizait semer, fleece halakuchim midrasim, taken out from the country, meaning they're in the raw state. They didn't come out of a factory where they could be identified. There might be some mark on them. I need to say fishton, bundles of flax, or lashon shalgarman, or tongues of purple. These are like strings of purple wool. They're dyed purple. All these things are standard. We'll see why. We'll see. The Gemara will explain all these examples to tell you the idea basically behind all of them is that the person gave up hope. But they're not all exactly as they seem. The Gemara is going to explain each one. I realize so all these things you can keep different. Rav Yehuda, not that he argues, but he says Kol sheish bo shinui. If there's some difference in any of them, something is different about them, then chayav lachos, you have to call it out. Meaning you have to return it. Cakes. Let's say you find one of these fig cakes, but there's a shard in one of them. So the person might have put that, he stuck something in there as an identification mark, or kikar b'tachamos, or there's a regular bun or a loaf of bread, whatever, which normally wouldn't have any identification mark. They all look alike, but there's some money inside. You put some money inside, or somebody made what they all call today schlitzel challah. When we learned this when we were kids, this Mishnah. They didn't know, we didn't know what Shlitzl Challah was, right? But you found a key in there. Rav Shimon Elazar Omer, call Kli on Puri and Chadax. Any new item on Puri we'll see is like a brand new item. They're right out of the factory. They all look alike. You don't have to call those out. So these are items that the next Mishnah we'll see are the reverse of many of these, where there is some identification mark on them, and therefore you have to return it or call it out, announce it, so that you make your best efforts to return it to the owner. Okay. Says the Gemara, matzah pairs from Bazarin, scattered fruits. How much? Scattered fruits. What, 2 fruits scattered? What, like, there's got to be some measurement. You find any fruit, it's scattered. Let's say there's thousands of fruits in the middle of the street, and they fell off the truck. The truck realized he's going to come back and look for them. Like, what is the measurements? What are you talking about, comma? So if you have a measure of fruits in 4 amas, presumably this is 4 square amas, in that's you can give up on that. You can keep it because the owner would have given up. Now we'll see the why in a minute. So Gemara says, hey, what's the case here? If they fell off the truck, let's say, or the guy dropped them, whatever, the kids were dropped, what's the difference how many there are? If they dropped them in the street, he doesn't realize that he lost them. And when he realizes that he lost them, he's going to give up on it because his other fruits, probably somebody picked it up or animals ate it or whatever. What's the difference how much there is or what area they're dropped? I feel to an amin if there's a lot more than that. The person would have given up on it. Either if he placed them down there, let's say you place some scattered fruits around an area there. Yeah, and you're planning on doing something with them later on. If you put a place in there, even if it's less than that, the guy placed I don't know what in the star of a Magen David, he placed a bunch of fruits, he's clearly he placed them there. So even if it's a smaller amount, not a kav, just a few fruits, then also you're not allowed to take it. So what is this business? If you found a kav within 4 amas, that you can keep. I understand if they fell off, if the guy just dropped them somewhere, what's the difference how many there are? He would have given up no matter if there's 1 apple or 30 apples or 300 apples. And if they were put down in a way that you could tell they were placed there, then obviously he didn't lose them. He put them there on purpose. So it's not a lost item. You can't keep it. We're speaking about at the gathering of the granary, meaning when they thresh the grains, or these, he calls them fruits, but it's like they were threshed. We're talking presumably about grains. And they threshed them over there in the street. Rashi says that he calls it B'shas Hasivas Gronos V'kan Dashan Ba'alein. The owners threshed them right there, and they took most of it with them, and they left this amount. In other words, they didn't just drop them haphazardly, and they didn't place them there to pick them up later on. They left this amount there. So we're talking about a very specific case. Clearly, if a truckload fell off, and the guys are going to come back and get them back. Maybe they're watermelons. Maybe they're worth a lot of money. Whatever, they're big. So if he's going to come back, no matter how much he's going to come back for, you can't keep that. And if it's something that he's not going to come back for, he just dropped them there, then certainly you can keep no matter what the shiur is. Here we're talking about where they left them there on purpose. In other words, they had gathered, it was a granary type of, it was the granary season. They threshed the stuff there in the streets, and this they left. In other words, they took most of the stuff, they left Askinim. Kabar Ramos, if it's that measure of kav in 4 amos to nefesh tefai, it's a lot of effort to pick up a kav of a grain or fruits, whatever, in area of 4 amos. Lo tarachin, she's not going to bother. Below haris, he's not going to come back with shakel and take them. Afkur mafkalu, so he abandons them. That's the idea of kav and arba amos. When he took most of the stuff and he left that there, he's not going to bother with that. But if it was in an area smaller than that, a kav, let's say in 3 amos, all right, or in 2 amos, he's going to bother with that. That's not such a big, it's not so troublesome to do that. He'll come back, but shakel and take him below mafkan, he's not mafkan. So that's the idea of here of kav in 4 amos. When you could tell that they left them there, and the question is he going to come back and take them? A kav in 4 amos, he's not going to bother with. But a kav in 3 amos or 2 amos or less, certainly he's going to come back. Boy, Rav Yomi himself asked this kasha when he gave this answer. I don't know if this is but What happens, okay, if a half a kav and 2 amos? Proportionally, Tosa says it's the same amount. But kabar, ba'amos, time of my, the reason is mishum daf shecha, because there's a lot of effort. It takes a lot of effort to bend down and pick these up in 4 amos. It's not as much of an effort because it's in half the area. Lo mafki is not mafker. Odo, and therefore you can't keep it. Odo and mishum lo chashivi, or you say no, because relatively speaking, a kav and 4 amos not worth that much. It's not going to be worth his trouble. Also, it's the same proportion. He's also not going to bother with it. What about kavayim b'shmon amos? What happens if you have double the amount, 2 kav in 8 amos? Now, again, is the reason kav amos time mishum davar because too much of an effort, too much effort to pick up a kav in a whole area of 4 amos. But kosher and kavayim b'shmon amos, and certainly 2 kav in 8 amos, which you could say is proportionally the same thing, but it's a lot more work. You got to go around 8 amos to pick it up. It's even more work. He's going to abandon them. Odilma, in the case of 1 kav, that's not as valuable. But kavayim mishmona amos, that's worth more. It's more valuable. It's 2 kav. It's more grain or more fruits. Lo mafker not mafker. What about kav shumshamin or sumsumin ba'arba amos? What happens if you have a kav not of fruits or grain, but rather sesame, which are very small? What about a kav there namas? Now, kav ba'arba, again, the reason of kav amos, what we say, those are considered abandoned time because they're not. It's not that valuable, so he's not going to bother with it. The shumshumin, keeping the chashiva, since they're worth more, lo mafker, he's not mafker. In other words, shumshumin are worth more than regular fruits or grains. Or is it because the reason why kav and 4 amos you're going to leave there is considered abandoned because it's not going to be worth the effort? Koshka and shumshumin, certainly in the case of sumsum of sesame, even though it's even more work because these are very tiny kernels. The amount of labor necessary to pick it up is even more. So certainly mafkalu. What about kav tamri ba'arba amos? What happens if you have dates or kav rimoni ba'arba amos or rimonim, which are large fruit? Mao kav ba'arba again time mishum lo chashivi because they're not worth. It's not worth the effort. Kav tamri ba'arba amos, kav rimoni amos also not making lo chashivi mafkalu. About the same thing, whether it's grain, fruits, pomegranates, or what are we talking about here, or dates. It's all the same. It's not going to be worth that much. It's not worth it. Or the reason is no, not because. And as when we say a kav 4 amos, is it because it's not worth the bother for that value, or is it because it's too much effort? If it's because it's too much effort to go around 4 amos and pick it up, the kav tamri since they're large, it's not that much effort because again they're larger or whatever. Lo mafker, you're not mafker. Take all these questions stand. So at the end of the day, you don't know. Mina safek, you shouldn't take the stuff. Then if you have any of these issues come up, amos or whatever, all these questions that stand, you should assume that they're not abandoned and you can't keep them. You have to call it out. You have to try to return it. However, the Rambam says that if you did keep it, since it's only a suffix of rabbanan, you can keep it. A suffix of mamonas, if you took it already, it's a suffix, you can keep it.
In a situation where you definitely have no chiyuv,
yeah,
no chiyuv, and the owner comes along and identifies this stuff.
It's not identifiable. We're talking about stuff that's not identifiable.
You because you have no chiyuv.
If there is an identifying mark, you made a mistake.
Do you have to be makneh to him, or does he automatically get it?
Look,
in other words, what's going on here?
Let's go. Look. If we're talking about things that clearly have no identification mark now, so you don't know, you cannot prove that it's his because there's no identification mark. If, therefore, you kept it, you acquired it. If you feel that he's still, despite that, he says he lost some stuff here, and fine. So it's his. It's his. There's no.
You don't have to be mucking.
No, because
it's not yours.
Right. Well, that's a question.
Right.
Klapi shmaya, is it yours or is it his? If it's yours, you have to be makneh to him. If it's really his, then he was never miyayish, and you don't have to be makneh because he never gave up hope on it. He never gave up hope on it. That's the whole idea.
Tell him no.
Yeah, the whole idea here is that he was miyayish, and therefore it's hefker.
We're assuming.
So right. So let's say he wasn't miyayish. Okay, that's the issue. That's what we're going to get into now. We're assuming you could assume he was miyayish. In all the cases in the Mishnah, all these different cases, you can assume he was miyayish, and therefore you could keep it. Now, if he wasn't miyayish in a particular case, he wasn't miyayish, but a person would have been miyayish. That's the question we're going to deal with right now. When a person finds out he would have been, but if you have one particular person who was not miyayish, so yeah, technically it still is. But this is the question you can assume. You can assume that he's going to be miyayish.
That assumption then is kinyan.
They're not going to kinyan. He never lost. He never gave up on it. In this particular case, he never gave up on it. You can assume that he would. A normal person would have given up on it. That's what you can assume. You're not going to call out anything. There's nothing to call out because there's no simon on this stuff. So how is this guy identifying it as his? You don't know that it's his.
When I pick something up from Hefker, I'm making a kinyan, right?
Right. You make a kinyan on it. Right. Right. Is it Hefker? But you're saying that this particular guy who lost it claims it's his, and he was never miyayish, and therefore it's not Hefker. No, so it's not Hefker. So according to him, he doesn't make a kinyan.
He has to add it to it.
Right.
And say you can't. I'm not giving it to you.
No. He can say because there's no way to identify. You can keep it. Technically, he could say that. But if he feels, well, the guy's a nice guy and he says it's his and all that, so you give it to him. But the truth is that you could be caught. You have to assume. In this case, this guy says it's mine, and I know I wasn't miyayish. Okay, but how do you know it's his? You don't know that it's his. So midas chasidus, you can give it to him. All right. Now we come to a big question. Itmar, top of the page. Yir shalom midas. What does that mean? Means that you picked up this item now, and it has no identifying mark on it, but you picked it up before he was miyayish. The whole idea of the Mishnah is that if a person lost these items, right, he gave up on it. Therefore, you can keep it. You don't have to call out. He gave up. There's no way to identify. He gave up. What happens if he wasn't miyayish yet? When he finds out, because he didn't realize he lost it. When he realized it's all the same. When he realizes that he lost it, he will give up on it. He'll abandon it because he knows this. Oh, I lost it. Forget about it. You went to Madison Square Garden. You dropped the $5 bill. As soon as you realize it's gone, it's gone. I gave you. There's no hope of getting it back. That's called yeshon. No. The person who found it. All these items. You ask why we have all these different. In all these cases, we assume that the person who lost it gave up on it because there's no identifying mark. You dropped an apple somewhere. You dropped a $5 bill. As soon as you realize you gave it up, you're miyayish. The guy can keep it. The guy who found it can keep it because you're assuming he can keep it. Yeah, we're assuming, and it's a good assumption. Why would you? If you dropped a $5 bill in the middle of Madison Square Garden, do you think you're going to get it back? When you didn't know about it, that's our question. That's what we're at. When you didn't know about it yet, does it work or not? Yir shalom midas. When it means shalom midas, he doesn't know right now that he lost it. When he realizes he lost it, he will give up because there's no identifying mark on it. There's no simon. But at this point in time, he didn't know yet, and you picked it up. So is that a kinyan or not? Yish shalom midas. Abai Omer lo aviyish is not yish. It's not yish yet. You picked it up too early. You shouldn't have. Right? You have to be machris. Right? You shouldn't pick it up. You picked it up wrongly. You shouldn't have picked it up. You shouldn't have picked it up yet, and you shouldn't have picked it up to keep it. Again, normally in Machlokes Abayim Rava, in almost all cases, we go like Rava. This is one of the 6 cases of Ya'al Kagam that we paskin like Abayah, as we'll see on tomorrow's daf. Yish Shlomidas is Ya'al Kagam, the Yud of Ya'al Kagam. The first letter is Yish Shlomidas. So we have a Machlokes between Abayah and Rava. Abayah says it's not Yish. It's not Yish, and you didn't acquire it. It's not Yish yet. And Rava says it is Yish, even though he doesn't know yet that he lost it. When he finds out tomorrow, when he realizes that he lost it, he will be miyayish for sure because there's no simon on it. It's like you're losing a $5 bill in the middle of the street. You know that you're going to be miyayish, but he doesn't know yet. That's our issue. So we have machlokes Abayah and Rava. Abayah says it's not Yish, and you didn't acquire it. You acquired it wrongly. You shouldn't have picked it up. Rashi says, right? Rava says no. It's considered Yish. Right, because when he finds out about it, he's not gonna be concerned about it anymore. In other words, he's going to give up on it, and therefore it's not. It's according to Rav, it is yish. But if we're talking about an item that has a siman, it's not yish. Even though you hear afterwards that the guy says, "Oi, I gave up on it." Kiss. Whoa, I lost it. Even though you heard the yish later on, but since it has a siman, you can assume at the beginning when he finds out, he's not going to give up right away. Even if later on he gave up. That's what we're saying. If it came into his hands when you picked it up to keep it, came into Isser, you shouldn't have taken it for yourself. You should have called it out. You shouldn't have taken it for yourself. We'll see later on. Sometimes if it's something that looks like the place could have been something, you shouldn't even pick it up because maybe the guy's going to come back. Sometimes you find something and you say, "I'll do him a favor." Maybe maybe it doesn't do him a favor. Maybe he left it there on purpose to pick it up later on, right? Let's say somebody left something in one of the cubbies here, right? So he left it there on purpose. You say, "Oh, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it home and I'll call him up and see if he lost it." He left it there on purpose. So even though you heard afterwards that it was miyayish, it's not considered laviyish. At the time the Chiyas B'Yisrael came to say yesterday, the Chiyada did not from him. When he finds out that he lost it, he's not going to give up if it has a simon. Neymar will certainly say, "Simon is to be. I have a simon. You have a simon. I'll give the simon. And I will take it." So if it has a simon, we're not talking about that. If it has a simon, you're certainly allowed to keep it. Let's say it was the place where the tide comes in near the ocean or a river overflowed. Even though you have a simon, this simon, Rahman Hashem Shari allowed you to keep the kabila. We're going to see in tomorrow's daf. That's something where, let's say you left something on the beach and the tide comes in, many hundreds of feet or yards or a few miles and takes the stuff out with it. So there, even if you had a simon, you gave up on it, as we'll see. So there, everybody agrees. Where's the machlok sabayim rabba? But davar she'ein bo simon. Somebody doesn't have a simon. Abai omer lo yish. It's not yish. How can you be yish? How can you give up on something if you don't even realize that you lost it yet? So you can't give up on it. It's not yish. Therefore, you took it b'yisur. Rava omer have a yish. Rava says it is yish to the chiyada nafmine miyayish. When he finds out, he's going to maybe certainly say similar. I don't have a simon. I have no simon to give up. Therefore, it's considered yish from right now. When he finds Shiyada, Shubain Daipol, if he's going to give up, and therefore it's considered yish from right now, and it didn't come into your hands b'isser because since it has no simon, even though he doesn't know yet that he lost it, it's still usher. Right? Yeah, it's like a retroactive yish, right? Like that. Tashma. So I'm going to try to bring proofs both ways. Tashma. Yeah.
Unclaimed baggage work.
Right. So we're
because they're the airline declaring it huge. It's unclaimed after they send it all down to Louisiana.
With airlines, it's different because as soon as you check in your baggage, you consider it lost. You gave up on it. So therefore, it's huge. So the assumption is there's a simon there. There's a simon, and you're not going to give up. And you're not going to. The machlokas is only when there's no simon. There's no simon.
Yeah, but here the airlines take all this baggage, you send it down to some place in Louisiana.
Yeah, for what?
6 months.
Right.
They sell it off for a dollar.
Okay, because nobody claimed it. They tried to return it, but nobody claimed it. Tashma. We're going to try to bring proof both ways. Tashma. Pears from Fuzar. Mishnah said scattered fruits. Halo yada nafmanei. He doesn't know that it fell from him. That's what we're assuming now. So that's a case where it's no simon, and he doesn't know. So it's Yish Lamidas. The Gemara says, no, didn't you learn Amar Aleph? Amar Abuk for Barcham? We said, we're talking about where they left it there on purpose. We're talking about where it was the granary time they were threshing there, and they took most of the stuff and they left that in the street. And they said it wasn't worth to come back for that. Too much effort, or it wasn't worth the money, or whatever. So that's not a case of he didn't know that he dropped it there. They left it there on purpose. So that's not a case of Yish Lamed. Yish Lamidas means he doesn't know that he lost it. When he finds out that he lost it, he'll give up, but he doesn't know at this point. This is the case where they knew right away. They left it on purpose. The Veda Midas, he left it there on purpose. He lost it on purpose. Like you killed yourself, you threw it out. Tashma. Muslims. What about scattered money? Well, also, he doesn't know. How do you know that he knows that he lost it? Maybe he didn't. How can you keep it? Maybe he doesn't know that he lost it yet. If you say, like Abaye, that Yish Lamidas is not Yish, you're not allowed to keep it. So you're not allowed to take it until the guy finds out. Oh, here when he dropped the money, he doesn't know yet. Amai hala enough. He doesn't let it happen. Hasanami also by the money also could be like this is going to say later on. We had this before. People check their wallets all the time, so he knows he lost it. If you lost a $5 bill, the assumption is you knew that you lost it, and therefore it's not Yish Midas, it's Yish Midas. He checks his wallet all the time. What about fig cakes, the kikushanachtim, or bakery buns? You know, how do you know that he lost it? How do you know that you dropped your lunch or whatever you had in your bag? Because these are heavy. These are heavy items, of fig cakes or some buns or a loaf of bread. You realize that you dropped it because it's heavy. Tashma, what about our mission says all these cases you could say are brought down to show you these different aspects of it according to Abai. He says if you had strings of purple wool, right, and you lost them, since they're all it's a common item. It's a common item to sell it that way. There's no simon on it. You gave up. Again, I really show you can keep it. Maybe the guy doesn't realize he dropped them. Tsunami, they're not as heavy, but I give the chashiva because since they're valuable, a person always feels that they're expensive. If you have something expensive that you're carrying, you check it all the time. Like Yitzchak said, that you check your wallet all the time. When you have something that's valuable, money, etc., you check it all the time. Tashma. Most by consistency. You find here this can come up often. You find some money in shul. Most beit knesses, beit mishnah, in the base knesses or base medrash. A place where many people are gathered. Now, you can keep it. He gave up on it. How do you know the guy knows that he dropped it? Maybe he doesn't know that he dropped the money. This is where Yitzchak said his thing. He said it specifically on this case of money dropping in shul. People check their wallets all the time, and therefore this is not Yish Midas, but it's Yish Midas. You could assume when you picked it up that he realized he lost it already and he gave up. We had this Gemara also before. From when is a person mutter to take leket? Leket is for the poor people. At what point have the poor people finished and the field has been abandoned and you can take whatever you want? From the time that the mushos have already gone through the field. What do you mean by nemushos? So two explanations. It's elderly people who walk with a cane. There's the older poor people who walk slowly. They don't want to get pushed around, so they walk at the end. The very last stragglers of the poor people. Once those people have gone through the field, then it's considered hefker. The owner has given up that leket. He assumes that the poor people have taken it. Whatever's left is hefker. Why do you say that it's hefker? You keep it. Okay, the aniyim over here gave up. Once they saw the stragglers and the old people, they figured there's nothing left. But there's other poor people elsewhere, not nearby. So for them, it's Yish Midas. They don't know yet that it's gone, right? They don't know that it's gone. They're not even near this field, so they don't know that it's gone. So how can you say, if you say Yish Midas is not Yish, how do you say, according to Abaye says Yish is not Yish, how do you say over here that anybody can come and take whatever they want from the field after the stragglers have gone? The answer is even the aniyim who aren't nearby, but they know that there are nearby. Hanach, the other ones who were far away, they gave up on it. They're the miyayish. Everybody's miyayish because if there's a field in Tel Aviv and I'm a poor person in Yerushalayim, I know the poor people over there are going to get it. So you're always miyayish right away. Again, it's yish midas. It's not yish midas. Toshma. If you find cut figs on the road, or on the side of a field of figs, or a fig tree, anota l'derech, which is hanging over the road. You found some figs underneath there, right? So whether it's cut figs, you found some figs there. Mutaras mishum gezel. There's no stealing over there. Presumably, any figs like that on the road or falling off a tree overhanging a road, the bottom is miyayish. Because he made them hefker. Hefker is part of for meiser. Let's say there were olives or carobs, then it's also. Because there he doesn't give up. Now, even though Abai says Yish Midas is not Yish, but the beginning it talks about the figs that are falling off that you can keep those. It's not a kasha gas. Agav the chashivi memashmish mehu. Because the figs are valuable, so the person always knows if they're missing. And therefore, he gave up if they fell on the road. He knows that they fall off. In other words, if it's cut figs that are considered valuable, he knows that they're gone, right? He knows what's missing. And in case of figs that fall off the tree, he also knows that they fall off and they're going to be gone. People are going to step on them and not worth much. He gave up. Ela Sefer L'Ravakasha, but the Sefer that says that carobs and olives you're not allowed to take if they fell off. Why not? Why isn't that Yish Lamidas? And you say over here it's also to take them. So Rava says Yish Lamidas says Yish, you could take them. According to Bai, you can't take them. This isn't the Sefer Kasha Rava. The Kani Bezesim Chav also Amaravu. No, Rava will say like this: Shiny's eye is full of a chazus love. You could tell from its appearance that it belongs to the owner of the tree right nearby. Even though they fall, the other people know that the place of that person, this is next to the field of Yankel. It's his field, it's his olives. Therefore, people will know, and therefore there's no yish in that case. It's like there's a simon, right? Again, the kasha was on Rava, isn't this yish lamidas? And if the yish lamidas, since it's also to take those olives and carobs, it seems that yish lamidas is not yish. The answer is no. That's speaking about a case where he doesn't give up on it at all. It's like there's a simon because people know that's the place, so you can tell what it is. Rashi says he figures people aren't going to take it, so he's not mafker. That's a specific case. But in other words, it's not a case where he finds out about it. When he will find out about it, he will be yayish. No, he's not going to be yayish. Rashi says merisa nikar shalmiu hilkach mari the owner l'chiyada the nafel when he realized it fell on mizam yayish. Everybody knows that it fell next to my tree below hefker below shaklu. Okay. So why in the ratio? Why in the case of the figs, the cut figs, and those figs we say that you're allowed to take them? Ratio now. I should say people know that if they're my fig tree. If you lost a messes, a fig when it falls off the tree, it automatically becomes repulsive, it becomes smashed up and no good, and therefore you give up. Tashma, another case. Let's say a Ganav stole or burgled from one person, gave it to somebody else. Or the river came. What he took when he gave. In other words, gave up on it because the Gazlan who stole something from somebody, the guy gave up, right? Because he gave it to another person. So there's both years because he knows he won't be able to retrieve it from the Gazlan, and there's also Shida Rishus. So he gave it the same thing of the Yarden. If the river came and took your stuff and moved it somewhere down river and gave it to somebody else, it's done. So Bishlam says the Gemara, Bishlam Gazlan be Yarden because he saw it. The Gazlan took it from you straight away. He took it from your hand, and the Jordan or the river. He lived near the Jordan, so he called it the Jordan. Any river that overflowed, took stuff from your property, gave it to somebody else. You saw that it's gone. Miyash, she gave up. Elaganif, the Ganif took it in the middle of the night. You didn't see it. Mika Chazled Miyash, did you say Miyash? It's also a case of Yishlomidas, right? Because the Ganif took it in the middle of the night. You don't know that it's gone. Why do you say that it's considered done? It's a kash on Abaye because right? Because this is a kash on Abaye because Abaye says Yish Lamidas, not Yish. So why over here do you say if the Ganif took and gave it to somebody else, you were Miyayish on it? It's Yish Lamidas. Talking about Papa listen to Mizuyim. This is not really a Ganif who came in the middle of the night, you don't know, but it's rather armed robbers. In other words, this Ganif is not a regular guy. This is the armed robbers, so you know that it's gone. It's Yish Midas. You give up. That's the same as a Gazlan, where he took it away from you forcibly, and you know about it. It's a straight Gavin Gazlan. There's two kinds of Gazlans. One who just robs it from you, and one who robs it from you at gunpoint. Either way, you're miyayish right away. So it's not Yish Lamidas. Toshma, another proof.
What does that mean? The Gazlan makes
not that the Gazlan's coded. He gave it to somebody else. So Shina Rishus. See, when you find it in the street, there's already Shina Rishus. It's in the public area. So but the Yish and Shina Rishus all you need. He's not necessarily coned, but he's coned with Yish and Shina Rishus. You're coned. You're coned with Yish and Shina Rishus. The Gazlan is not really because there's no Shina Rishus yet. Because it still belongs.
What Shina Rishus?
Then is the Shina Rishus he gives it to somebody else or he abandoned it somewhere. You have to have we learned before in Agozel in Baba Kama that a Gazlan, if he changed the nature of the item, he took wood and turned it into a desk. That's Shini Masa. That's Kona. He acquires it. Or Yish together with Shina Rishus. He didn't change the item, but there's Yish with Shina Rishus. So it's a good kasha. Our Mishnah, where's the Shina Rishus there? It's in the Rishus Arabim. You found it in the middle of nowhere. So the Shina Rishus there and Yish. But over here, the question is it Yish? We're trying to prove cases of Yish Lamidas, and what do we say in all these cases? It's either not Yish or it's Yish Midas. In other words, we're trying to prove cases of Rava Yish Lamidas, where you don't know that you lost it, but when you know that you lost it, you will definitely abandon it. You'll definitely be miyayish. So we said in all these cases, either you lost it, so it's yish midas, or you're not miyayish, but for some other reason, because you think you'll still find it, you'll still claim it because you have some simon, or they won't take it. Tashma, shatav narkar. Let's say the river took your beams, eighths of your wood, avanas your stones, it pushed all the stuff downstream. Harel shalo, they belong to the person, to your neighbor, where the river deposited them. Because you gave up. Time in the is because he gave up. Hastama, even though you're going to give up later on, even stam if you weren't miyayish lo. So that's a kasha on Rava. Rava says yush lamidas is yush. Here it's mashma only because it says they belong to the person downstream because the owner was miyayish. Mashma only because it's miyayish. But if he stam where he wasn't miyayish yet, even though he'll be miyayish later on, you can't acquire it. So it's different over here. It's only miyayish when it's picking a case where he can still retrieve it, right? Like Rashi says, Mציעא acheres davar sheyesh bo siman. Mציעא is like a different Mציעא would be you have a siman. In other words, he knows he can retrieve it. He knows he's gonna be able to claim it. So here it's speaking about where the owner could save it. So Yachim a safe. It says it says over there if the owner was running after it, he was chasing on the banks of the river. He was running down, following the stream of the river. You have to return it. If you could save it, why do you say he was running after it? Even if he's not pursuing it, also you're saying if he wants, he could save it if he wants to. But what do you say if he's pursuing it? I feel even if he's not pursuing it, you should also be able to. You should also have to return it to him because he's able to save it. He can only save it with great effort. In other words, by running after it and pushing it. Maratin, if he's running after it, lo yayish, that shows that he's not miyayish. Ain't maratin, yosh miyayish. If he's not maratin, then he's miyayish. So we say over here. So what it means is, if he's miyayish, you can keep it. So it's mashma that if he's not miyayish now, but even though he's miyayish later on, then you may not keep it. No, that's not what it means. It means is that the owner here can retrieve it if he really wants to. If he doesn't run after it, that shows that he's miyayish. If he runs after it, then he's not miyayish. And that's what we mean over here, but it doesn't mean stam that'll be miyayish later on. Where do we say, let's say I have a field and I have to give truma to the Kohen, and somebody came and gave truma for me on my behalf. So the term shalamidas, I didn't know. Now we're taking a different step. This is not a lost item here that we're talking about, right? Till now we're talking about items that you lost, right? That you find something, losers, keepers, losers, weepers, finders, keepers. We're talking about lost item. Here we're comparing to something else, where somebody took truma on my behalf without my knowledge. What's the case? Once Reuben went into Shimon's field, and he gathered stuff. He gave truma shalov. Im choshish mishum gezo. If the owner is concerned that maybe if the concern over here is in the as makbid, he says, what did you do over here? And it's like you stole my stuff. And truma. You can't give truma if I didn't agree to it, right? Im lav. If not, if he's not concerned about gezo, as the owner would have agreed to it, truma. Then it is a good truma. And I knew Yodea. How do you know if he's concerned or not? Im choshesh, if he's concerned with gezo. How do you know if the owner is makbid that he didn't want this guy to do it? How do you know? The imlav, or if he's not makbid. Haresh Ababa says the owner comes home and matzo, and he says, "Oh, what did you do over here? You gave this stuff for truma?" And he said, "Klach etzel yafos. Why didn't you take the nicer ones to give to the Kohen?" Imnim so yafos made if there are taka nicer ones to truma. That shows that he agreed. He was happy with what you did. Oh, you gave this to Kohen. Why didn't you give him the nicer ones? Imlav, if there are no nicer ones, and he said, "Why didn't you give him the nicer ones?" And because he's being sarcastic. Oh, you gave him this. Why didn't you give him my best stuff? Like, what are you doing over here? Like, that shows it's not truma. Right?
Even though he has to give truma.
Even though he has to give truma, but he didn't give it, apparently it was without permission, right? So the question is, if the owner's happy with it, it's good. If the owner's not happy, not. It's not a schus for him necessarily, because we'll see, he has to give truma, but he might have given the worst stuff, he might have given a lesser amount. Like truma, there's no fixed amount. Could have given from someplace else, he could give him like garbage, whatever. That's not necessarily schus. Liktu abaylim, let's say the owner himself added on to what this person set aside. Even if he said, "Why don't you give nicer ones?" But if the owner added on, that shows you could tell from his action if he was happy or not. But if you find nicer ones, you say it is a good truma. In the Tarum, when the time was when Reuben went into Shimon's field and took truma for him, he didn't know about it. He didn't know. Reuben didn't know about it apparently. Laviyada, Rashi says Alma. Take a look at Rashi in the middle of the page. Laviyada. Alma kivin the chiyada nechale. Since when he finds out about it later on, he's happy now. He's shown himself to be happy. We say, well, in Yishnami, we compare it to Yish and say, kivin the chiyada miyayish, mikarnami aviyish, like Rava. It's a kasha nabaya. See over here, since at the beginning the owner didn't know, but if it turns out that when he finds out about it, he's happy, so it's considered as if he knew about it originally. So, and that's the same thing with Yish. Since when he finds out about it, he will be miyayish. It's like he's miyayish right now. It's a kasha on Abaya. Targum of Rava. So even Rava, who was arguing with Abaya, but he explained what Abaya would say. Rava would say, Abaya would say, the Shavuot Shliach, this is not a case for Yish Shalamidas, or it's Shalamidas. Here, the owner actually made Shimon had made Reuben a shliach. He made a shliach. And the question, so what was the issue? The issue was he didn't know how much to give us. We'll see. Mistavra, Yisach lo shav shliach. Mi havi truma truma at all when he nashich. For atem gam atem. It says when it comes to truma, it says gam atem. And Rashi says, "Can't truma gam atem." You learn from here that shliach shalom kamosa when it comes to truma. That the shliach they gave truma, but it says like gam atem amrachman al rabba shluchach matem dachim. Just like when you give something, you give it with your own knowledge. Your shliach has to be with your acknowledgement. Somebody can't just go in and give it to you without your reshus. Elohachav mayaskinan. In other words, even if you say Irving, if you say it's a schus for him, then maybe the Torah says specifically over here you have to do it with his das. Elohachav mayaskinan. Over here, it's being going to Shabbos. He made a shliach. Amalei zil trom. He says, "Go give truma." Below amalei trom mahani. He didn't say take truma from this marn. And from this particular group of vegetable, of whatever it was, grains, whatever. The stamina balabais kitarminas, stamina balabais, he gives some of his average stuff utarim. Bazo iyabatar miafas, and the shliach Reuben went and he gave from the best stuff. Well, balabais came in with matzah and he found him. Amalei plachak, why didn't you take the nicer stuff? In nimsu yafos, man, if you have nicer ones, then trumas truma shows that he wanted to. Mav ain't trumas truma, and not it's not a good truma because he didn't want to. But again. The whole proof over here was that it seems to be something shlomidas. It's like taking truma shlomidas, and if it turns out he's happy afterwards, as if he was happy before. Says Gemara, no, we're not even talking about a case like that. It wasn't shlomidas because he signed the shliach before, and maybe he didn't tell him how much to take, or he didn't tell him from what to take. And the question is he happy with it? He did or not? It has to be shabalim appointed him a shliach, and that's what the money is. So again, we don't have a solid proof either way to Abai and Rava. From here, the Gemara tomorrow will tell a story about. Also about when the owner says, why didn't you give a nicer one? What did he mean by that? We're going to tell a story about that. And then on tomorrow's daf, we'll see a Mitzvah Shem, a psak like Abaye, that hilchos like Abaye, that what bi'al kagam, that yish lamidas lo have a yish. And therefore, if it came into your possession illegally, because you took it before the guy was actually miyayish, even though he'll find out, when he finds out he'll be miyayish, you weren't entitled to keep it. So it's considered stolen goods. Stolen goods at that point, you're not allowed to.
How do you know when you find something?
Yeah.
Whether you're dealing with a yish shalamidas.
Because it has no simon. If it has no simon. If it has no simon.
How do you know when the ball is?
Okay, so that's that one. But well, when it comes to, it depends what it is. If it's something that you can tell, in all these cases we showed, you could tell that the guy knows about it.
Right.
Right. So
you find something. You don't. It could have been lost now. It could have been lost for now.
Right. So you don't know. You have to go to chumrah.
You leave it.
You leave it. Yeah. If you don't know, right. Or you call it out. Yeah. Yeah. You call it out. But if there's no simon, there's nothing to call out.